You sit down at a familiar desk, the screen lights up. The mouse moves. The icons are where they've always been. For years, Windows has been the default rhythm of personal computing, so normal that most people never question it. Click, wait, update, restart, click again. Somewhere along the way, that rhythm started to feel heavier, slower, more demanding. Yet most users still assume there is no real alternative, not anymore. Because quietly, without marketing hype or billboard ads, Linux has grown into something Windows users are deeply unprepared for. Linux today is not the obscure hacker playground people remember from a decade ago. It is not just lines of code flying across a black terminal, nor is it an operating system that demands you sacrifice comfort for control. Modern Linux is polished, fast, visually elegant, and shockingly capable. It does things Windows users have been told are impossible, unsafe, or too complicated. And it does them calmly, efficiently, and often for free. The biggest shock for a Windows user isn't the interface. It's the feeling of ownership. On Windows, you rent your computer. You follow its rules. Updates arrive when Microsoft decides they should. Features are added or removed without your consent. System resources are consumed by processes you never asked for. Linux flips this relationship completely. The computer belongs to you again. Nothing installs without permission. Nothing runs unless you allow it. Updates happen when you choose, not when a corporation decides your workflow can be interrupted. Boot a modern Linux system, and the first thing you notice is speed. Not benchmark speed, but human speed. Apps open instantly. The system responds without hesitation. Even older hardware feels reborn. A laptop that struggled under Windows 10 suddenly feels light and eager. This isn't magic. Linux simply doesn't waste resources on telemetry, ads, background services, and duplicated system layers. It uses what you give it and nothing more. Windows users are often told that slowdowns are inevitable, that hardware ages, that the solution is to buy a new machine. Linux quietly proves this narrative wrong every day. Computers that were considered obsolete are running modern browsers, editing videos, writing code, and even playing games. Schools, libraries, and small businesses around the world rely on Linux, not because it is cheap, but because it refuses to abandon usable machines. Then there is control. True control, not the illusion of customization offered through themes and wallpapers. On Linux, you choose how your system behaves at a fundamental level. You choose the desktop environment, the window manager, the file system, the startup behavior, the shortcuts, the animations, the performance profile. You can make your system look like Windows, like macOS, like something minimal and futuristic, or like nothing else that has ever existed. And none of this requires registry hacks or third-party tools that break after the next update. Security is another area where Windows users are far behind the curve. Windows security is reactive. It assumes threats are everywhere and attempts to catch them after they appear. Linux security is architectural. The system is designed from the ground up to limit damage. Applications run with restricted permissions. System files are protected by default. Malware rarely spreads because there is no single dominant target and no easy way to escalate privileges. Viruses that devastate Windows machines often do absolutely nothing on Linux. But the real surprise is how invisible this security feels. There is no constant nagging, no pop-ups demanding attention, no antivirus subscription countdowns. Linux protects itself quietly, in the background, without draining performance or user patience. For a Windows user used to fighting their own security software, this feels almost suspiciously peaceful. Software installation is another revelation. On Windows, installing software often means hunting through search results, dodging fake download buttons, declining bundled offers, and hoping nothing unwanted slips through. Linux replaces this chaos with package managers. One command or one click installs software that is verified, maintained, and updated through trusted repositories. Everything updates together. The operating system, applications, drivers, and dependencies all move in harmony. No separate updaters, no version conflicts, no broken installs. This unified update model is something Windows users struggle to imagine until they experience it. There is no Adobe updater, Chrome updater, driver updater, all competing for attention. One update process. One update process. One moment. Complete control. And if you don't want to update today, nothing forces you to. Then there is privacy. Windows has become increasingly chatty. Telemetry is baked deep into the system. Data collection is normalized and difficult to fully disable. Linux takes the opposite approach. Most distributions collect nothing by default. No usage statistics, no behavioral tracking, no cloud accounts required just to log in. You can use Linux for years without creating a single online account or sending a single data packet beyond what you explicitly choose. For users who care about digital independence, this alone is transformative. Your computer becomes a tool, not a data source. Your habits are not analyzed. Your files are not scanned for advertising insights. You exist outside the algorithmic gaze that has become unavoidable on mainstream platforms. Windows users often assume Linux lacks software. This was once partially true. It is no longer. Browsers, office suites, creative tools, communication apps, development environments, and media players are all readily available. LibreOffice rivals Microsoft Office for most use cases. GIMP and Krita handle image editing with professional depth. DaVinci Resolve, Blender, Kdenlive, and OBS power serious video production. Entire Hollywood films, visual effects pipelines, and animation studios run on Linux. Gaming is another area where assumptions collapse. For years, Linux gaming was a punchline. Now it is a quiet revolution. Thanks to Proton, Vulkan, and active support from Valve, thousands of Windows games run on Linux with little to no performance loss. Many run better. Steam Deck itself is a Linux machine, and its success has pushed developers to care about Linux compatibility in ways that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Drivers, long considered a Linux weakness, have become one of its strengths. Many drivers are built directly into the kernel. Hardware simply works. Updates improve support instead of breaking it. There is no need to hunt manufacturer websites for outdated installers. Printers, keyboards, mice, webcams, audio interfaces, and controllers increasingly function out of the box. Linux also respects the idea of modularity. You don't have to accept everything at once. You can install a minimal system that uses a few hundred megabytes of memory or a full-featured desktop with modern effects. You can strip the system down to essentials or build it up into a powerhouse. Windows users are accustomed to one-size-fits-all. Linux offers a spectrum. For creators, Linux offers something deeper than performance or freedom. It offers silence. No pop-ups. No forced updates. No license checks interrupting your flow. The system fades away and lets you work. Writers write, artists draw. Musicians compose, developers build. The operating system stops demanding attention and starts providing space. The terminal, often feared by Windows users, turns out to be a superpower, not a requirement, but an option. When used, it offers speed, precision, and automation unmatched by graphical interfaces. Tasks that take minutes of clicking on Windows take seconds on Linux. Entire workflows can be scripted, repeated, and refined. You stop fighting the computer and start collaborating with it. Even for non-technical users, Linux has become approachable. Distributions like Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Zorin OS, and Pop! _OS are designed for people who just want their computer to work. Installation is guided. Interfaces are familiar. Community support is vast. Problems are documented, discussed, and solved publicly instead of hidden behind corporate support walls. What truly catches Windows users off guard is the culture. Linux is not built to extract value from users. It is built by people who use it. Bugs are discussed openly. Features are debated. Improvements come from real needs, not quarterly profits. When something doesn't work, the conversation is transparent. When something improves, the credit is shared. This culture produces resilience. Linux does not depend on one company's vision. If a project fails, another replaces it. If a direction is unpopular, forks appear. Innovation happens in parallel, not in secret. The system evolves through cooperation, not control. Once a Windows user spends enough time in Linux, returning feels strange. The delays feel heavier. The restrictions feel arbitrary. The constant background activity feels intrusive. It's not that Windows suddenly became worse. It's that Linux quietly raised the standard of what a personal computer can be. Linux can turn an old laptop into a reliable daily machine. It can give professional stability without subscriptions. It can give gamers choice. It can give privacy without sacrifice. It can give control without chaos. And it can do all of this while asking almost nothing in return. Windows users aren't ready for this not because Linux is difficult, but because it challenges assumptions they've lived with for years. The assumption that slowdowns are normal, that updates must be disruptive, that privacy is optional, that ownership is temporary. Linux gently dismantles these ideas, one quiet boot at a time. The real moment of realization doesn't come when you install Linux. It comes weeks later. When you realize you haven't rebooted in months. When you forget what forced updates feel like. When your computer simply works, day after day, without drama. That's when it hits. Linux isn't trying to impress you. It's just doing what an operating system was always supposed to do. And once you see that, it becomes very hard to unsee.